According to historian Percy Perry Dewis, generations of misbehaving Chicago children were straightened out with an ominous warning, that is, be careful or you'll end up at Dunning. Geoffrey Baer is here to tell us about this notorious asylum and poor farm in tonight's edition of Ask Geoffrey. Geoffrey, good to see you.
Glad to be here.
And this question does come from Chicago. What can you tell me about the railroads that serve the old Chicago State Hospital in Dunning?
Well, Chicago State Hospital was the notorious institution for mental illness that was located in the Dunning neighborhood on the northwest side of Chicago, where Chicago Reed Mental Health Center is today. You could get there on a train. There are actually two trains that served Dunning. One of them went down Forest Preserve Drive. The other one went south and connected up with the Milwaukee Road at Galewood. There's still a station there on the Milwaukee West line. The trains were rather cruelly nicknamed crazy trains, and so that's how you could get there on the train. None of those railroad lines are there anymore. Dunning started out in the 1850s as the Cook County Poor Farm or Almshouse and Insane Asylum. It grew into a campus of many buildings and thousands of patients. It was located way out in the country so that the mostly foreign-born inmates, as they were called, could be isolated. It was named for a local property owner, and it was just a hellish place from the start. The so-called insane poor were confined to tiny jail cells in an unheated building. It was so cold in the winter that they couldn't bathe. There was a lot of graft among the employees who were mostly politically appointed. The chief physician at one time exhumed bodies and sold them to medical colleges.
Well, it sounds like something out of a Stephen King novel.
Yeah, amazing. Just it was just a horrible place. Visitors had to walk 2.5 miles to get there from the nearest train station until the Chicago and Milwaukee eventually did build that train station. And I love this postcard. Greetings from Dunning.
Wish you were here.
It became a state hospital in 1912, but it would continue to operate on the kind of the insane asylum model. In the 1970s, it merged with the much more modern and progressive Charles F. Reed Outpatient Mental Health Center that had been built across the street, and today that is the Chicago Reed Mental Health Center. Almost all of Dunning's buildings today are gone. They've all been torn down, but it's sort of eerie if you go out there because you can still see the foundations of the old Dunning buildings. There's also an outlet there of Maryville child care. But the most incredible relic from Dunning is this. It's the Reed Dunning Memorial Park. It's kind of hard to find, and it stands on the site of a potter's field. That is a cemetery for unclaimed bodies, many of whom died in the bad old days at Dunning and were buried here. The park was established after human remains started being found on construction sites in the area. And these markers here memorialize Civil War veterans, unidentified victims of the Chicago fire, orphans and abandoned children, and the sick and poor at Dunning.
What a strange tale that is.
Yeah, and unbelievable.
Next question comes from Rogers Park. 50 years ago, I used to take my little brother to the Academy of Sciences. There were some great dioramas of the natural history of the area. What happened to those displays?
If there's one thing people remember about the old Chicago Academy of Sciences, it was those great dioramas. So until 2001, the Chicago Academy of Sciences was housed in this building at Clark and Armitage. It's now called the Laughlin Building. Look at this great old film footage they gave us. The building was filled with these life-sized displays of taxidermied animals in natural-looking settings, which they started building in 1903. The stars of the dioramas were the animals, but they were surrounded by these very detailed backgrounds created from photo montages, and the backgrounds also displayed hundreds of native plant species and a wide variety of insects. Now, in later years, a museum director experimented with some innovative techniques using black light and phosphorescent paint to accentuate the specimens, but a lot of the specimens actually deteriorated over the decades. And finally, you know, the museum moved. It's now the Peggy Notebart Nature Museum, which is just north of Lincoln Park Zoo. So when they moved over there, what happened to the dioramas?
That's the question.
Yes. Well, they were dismantled, but many of the specimens from those old dioramas have actually been salvaged and are part of new dioramas that they have here at the Peggy Notebart Nature Museum called the Wilderness Walk. My 3-year-old and 5-year-old love these displays.
I've not been there. I should check that out.
And they're much more modern. They light up only when people walk into the displays so that the light doesn't damage the specimens when nobody's in there. They have very natural sound effects. There's no glass between you and the display, so it's kind of, you get a really kind of a sense of access. So it's a lot of fun.
Our next question comes from Rogers Park. A relative told me that there was a Tiffany stained glass window over the entrance to Lakeview High School, but I've walked past many times and never seen it. Is this true?
Well, there is a stained glass window at Lakeview High School, but it's not Tiffany, and it's not over the entrance to the building. It's actually at the entrance to the auditorium wing on Irving Park Road. It's a memorial to B. Frank Brown, who was a popular and innovative principal there for 12 years until he died suddenly in 1924. And the students and staff and the alumni took up a collection to create this wonderful stained glass window in his honor. The central figure is a woman holding a torch in a palm, and there are allegorical figures of nature and mind and body and art, and there's signs of the zodiac, and there's a pen and an inkwell, symbols of leisure. There's a boy fishing, and even a quote from one of the principal's favorite poems by Sam Walter Foss: "Let me live in my house by the side of the road where the race of men go by." The window does need some restoration, and so there's actually going to be a spaghetti dinner on May 7th to raise money to restore this window, and people can find information about that on our website.
I think it's a lovely notion that a principal was so beloved that after his death, the school community wanted to do that. And you wonder how many of the kids in the school today really know that that was the purpose of it. Geoffrey, thank you. For more information on these Chicago landmarks, be sure to visit our website. And if you have a question you'd like to ask Geoffrey, or a question about wine and spirits for alpinisting, you can email us at askwttw@wttw.com. Or you can call 773-509-5360 to leave a voice message with your question. That number again, 773-509-5360.